Thanksgiving was supposed to be peaceful, but my family does not do peaceful. My dad tapped his crystal glass and said loudly, "Only successful kids sit at this table." My sister Jade smiled like she had already won something, and my mom nodded with pride. They both looked at me as if I had no place there. I did not argue. I placed a sealed letter in front of my father and waited. He picked it up with an annoyed sigh, opened it, and read the first line. His hand froze. His face turned pale. Then he looked at me and asked quietly, "Sarah, what did you do?" Nothing else in the room moved. For the first time in years, I had their full attention. My name is Sarah Wynne Hale, and I learned early that in my family, love is earned by showing results, not by being a decent human being. My sister Jade always knew how to shine for our parents, so she became the center of everything. I became the shadow in the background. Thanksgiving only made that difference more obvious. When I arrived, Jade opened the door wearing a designer coat and a smile that never reached her eyes. My mother rushed toward her, hugging her like a celebrity had entered the house. She looked at me next and said, "Sarah, try not to spill anything tonight. We are hosting important people." I swallowed the sting and nodded. I had brought a homemade dish because I could not afford the fancy extras my mother liked to show off. She barely looked at it. Jade laughed and whispered to her, "Mom, just hide it in the kitchen. We don't need it ruining the table." My mother actually agreed. Inside the dining room, the table was set like a magazine cover. My father rearranged seats and said, "Jade, front and center. Sarah, you sit toward the end. Success belongs here." He tapped the main seats at the top of the table. Jade flipped her hair, soaking in the attention. My mother adjusted Jade's napkin like she was preparing royalty for a photo shoot. I sat silently at the far end, watching them celebrate a version of success built on shallow achievements and image. They never asked how I was doing. They never noticed the exhaustion in my face after months of job hunting. They had no idea how hard the past year had been for me. I kept my expression calm, but inside, something was shifting. This was the last Thanksgiving where they would talk over me, ignore me, or treat me like a burden. They had no clue what I had discovered. They had no idea how long I had prepared for this moment. Jade leaned in toward the family and said loudly, "Everyone here has something to be proud of except Sarah." Laughter followed her voice, sharp and cold. I did not react. I had already decided how the night would end. What I brought to that table was not a dish or a decoration. It was truth, and truth was about to turn the entire Hale family upside down. Before the turkey was carved, before the toasts were made, one letter would change everything they believed about me and about themselves. If you're enjoying the story so far, make sure to subscribe and comment where you're watching from. The moment my father announced the seating arrangement, the old familiar weight settled on my chest, the same heaviness I had carried since I was a teenager listening to Jade being praised, while I was told to be more like her. Jade slid into her place at the head of the table as if she had earned it through greatness rather than manipulation. My mother adjusted Jade's hair, touched her shoulder, and said, "You deserve to be here. You worked so hard, sweetheart." Then she looked at me and muttered, "Sarah, sit wherever there is space." It was such a small sentence, but it held years of dismissiveness. I sat at the far end of the table, close enough to hear the conversation, but far enough to be forgotten in it. I watched Jade hold court, talking about her latest brand partnership and how she was planning a collaboration trip to California. My mother gasped at every detail like Jade was describing the cure for a deadly disease. My father nodded proudly and said, "This is what happens when someone commits to success." He turned to me, his expression flat. "You should take notes from your sister. Life rewards the bold, not the ones who sit around waiting for the world to change for them." His words cut deep, but not because they were new. I had heard versions of them my entire life. What hurt was how easily he delivered them, as if speaking to someone who had never done anything worthy of respect. Jade leaned forward and made her voice loud enough for everyone at the table to hear. "Dad, stop. Sarah is trying her best. Not everyone can keep up." She said it with a fake tone of sympathy that let everyone know she did not mean kindness. She wanted them to laugh, and they did. Even my aunt chuckled softly, as if cruelty was acceptable as long as Jade delivered it with a smile. I gripped my napkin under the table, forcing myself to remain steady. I could not reveal anything too early. Everything depended on timing. Meanwhile, the table buzzed with praise for Jade's achievements, which were impressive only because no one in the room knew how she got them. My family believed Jade's life was built on effort and skill, but I knew the truth. Months earlier, I discovered Jade had been involved in something that destroyed my career. She had worked with a friend in HR to leak personal information about me, so her friend could take a promotion I had earned after years of hard work. Jade's involvement was not revealed immediately. I only learned the truth when someone from my old office, someone who actually liked me, whispered that my name had come up in conversations it was never supposed to be in. That discovery broke something inside me. I had spent years supporting Jade emotionally and financially, even covering some of her early expenses when she first tried to grow her online presence. I attended every event she invited me to. I defended her when people called her selfish. I never expected her to betray me so deeply. The shock slowly turned into a quiet fury, one that grew stronger each time my parents dismissed me while praising her. Tonight, that fury sat just beneath the surface, steady and controlled. Jade bragged nonstop, waving her hands, laughing loudly, and telling stories about people who adored her. My mother leaned in and said, "You always knew Jade had something special. You cannot teach that kind of brilliance." My father replied, "She is the future of this family. Sarah, you could learn a few things if you stopped being so sensitive." I kept my face calm, but my heart beat hard against my ribs. I stared at Jade, who gave me a pitying smile, the kind someone gives to a child who has fallen behind. Inside that smile was the same arrogance that allowed her to ruin my life without guilt. She believed I would never fight back. My mother and father believed the same. None of them knew that I had spent the last 3 months collecting evidence, documenting conversations, tracing email trails, and organizing files. They did not know I had recorded a phone call between Jade and her HR friend, where Jade laughed about how Sarah always falls apart under pressure. They did not know I had spoken to legal advisors who confirmed that what Jade and her friend did was unethical and damaging enough to ruin careers. They did not know every brand she partnered with had strict codes of conduct that she had violated through this sabotage. They did not know I had already spoken to my father's board members, who were growing uncomfortable with his obsession over appearance rather than ethics. They did not know that the letter sitting on his plate held documents that would shatter the illusion of Jade's success and reveal how deeply she and my mother had conspired against me. As my father continued praising Jade, I folded my hands and breathed slowly. They kept thinking they were winning. Every insult, every laugh, every small dismissal pushed them closer to the edge without them realizing it. I looked around the table, watching people enjoy their food, while I carried a storm they could not see. Their confidence only made my plan stronger. Jade raised her glass for a toast and said, "To success, family, and knowing your worth." Everyone lifted their glasses. I did not. My father noticed and gave me a disappointed shake of his head. He had no idea that I was the one person in the room who knew her worth better than ever. He also had no idea that by the end of the night, so would they. I sat there listening to them toast to success, pretending their words had no effect on me, but inside I felt the steady shift of something long overdue. The moment the glasses clinked together and Jade flashed her perfect smile toward our parents, I understood with absolute clarity that I would not let this night end with me sitting in silence again. For years, I had played the quiet role they assigned me, the daughter who blended into corners, the sister who swallowed her pain to keep peace, the one they could insult without consequence. That version of me had finally died the day I discovered how deeply Jade and my mother were involved in the ruin of my career. Tonight, the part of me that replaced her was ready to move with calm intention. I placed my fork down carefully, wiped my hands on my napkin, and let my breathing settle into something slow and controlled. The dining room was full of laughter, every voice brighter and louder than usual, as if my family believed the universe existed to applaud Jade's accomplishments. My mother leaned toward my father and whispered something about how proud she was to have a daughter who was going somewhere. And Jade looked at me again with that same condescending smile. She believed she had won before the battle even began. She believed I would never dare speak up, let alone expose anything. She believed my quiet meant weakness. That belief was the final push I needed. I reached into my bag and felt the smooth envelope between my fingers. I had carried it for weeks, waiting for the right moment, the moment when the truth would have the most impact. I stood slowly, letting my chair slide back across the floor. The sound cut through the noise at the table. My father looked up, confused. My mother stiffened, annoyed that I had interrupted Jade's story. Jade tilted her head, her expression tight with irritation. I walked to the center of the table and placed the envelope directly in front of my father. Every pair of eyes followed my hands. I said, "Before you talk about success again, read this." My voice was steady, without anger or fear, and that alone made Jade shift in her seat. She was used to me shrinking, apologizing, excusing myself. She did not recognize this version of me. My father frowned and said, "Sarah, what is this supposed to mean?" I did not answer. I simply folded my hands in front of me and waited. He sighed, tore open the flap, and unfolded the first sheet. His eyes scanned the top line, and his face changed in an instant. Color drained from his cheeks. His lips parted slightly, as if the words had struck him physically. He lowered the paper, then raised it again and read the same line twice. My mother leaned forward and asked, "Raymond, what is that?" He did not respond. She reached across the table and took the papers from him, her brows lifting with impatience. But her expression shifted just as quickly as his. Her hand trembled. Her mouth opened, then snapped shut. She looked at me, not with confusion, but with recognition. She understood exactly what she was holding. She knew what I had uncovered. The silence around the table tightened like a knot. Jade frowned, annoyed that attention had shifted away from her again. She said, "What is this? Another dramatic moment from Sarah? Whatever it is, it cannot be that serious." Her voice cracked slightly, a thin fracture in her confidence. I turned to her and said, "Read it." My mother tried to hold the papers back, but Jade snatched them. Her eyes moved left to right, and slowly her face morphed from irritation to disbelief to fear. Her hands shook harder than my mother's. She looked between my parents and then at me. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Sarah, where did you get all of this?" I stepped closer, so only the family could hear me, and said, "I got it from your emails, your calls, your messages, and every person you used while planning to ruin my life." The table erupted. My father demanded answers. My mother insisted that I must have misunderstood something. Jade said my name again, this time with a tremor she could not disguise. None of them knew what to do with the calm on my face. They were used to seeing me break, not stand. I took the remaining seat at the center of the table, the one they claimed was reserved for successful people. I rested my hands on the polished wood and said, "You spent years telling me I did not belong here. Tonight I decide where I belong." My father tried to regain control by raising his voice, but even that did not shake me. I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "I am done being the quiet one. I am done being the one you talk over. You wanted success at this table. Now you get to see what real success looks like." The fear on their faces was not only from the contents of the letter, it was from seeing a version of me they could no longer dismiss or control. My decision was made. The truth had already been set in motion, and by the end of the night, they would understand that everything they took pride in had been built on lies. They would understand that the daughter they underestimated was the one holding all the power now. Jade stared at me with wide eyes, clutching the papers like they were burning her hands, and for the first time in her life, she did not have a clever insult ready. The confidence she carried all evening, the smugness she wore like perfume, began to leak away. My father reached across the table and snatched the documents back from her, skimming through each page as though he hoped he had misread the first one. His breath grew uneven. My mother tried to snatch the papers from him again, but he held them tight. Finally, he said in a strained voice. This cannot be real. I stepped closer so he would have no choice but to face me. It is real. Every line, every screenshot, every recording. He shook his head, stumbling over the words. You are telling me your sister was involved in your termination at work? That she helped leak your personal information? That she encouraged someone in HR to replace you? His voice kept rising, but it was not anger toward Jade yet. It was disbelief that the daughter he dismissed as weak had uncovered something this damaging. Jade slammed her hands on the table. This is twisted. You are twisting everything. I never meant for it to go that far. She looked at our mother as if begging for backup. Marilyn stood, her face stiff with cold calculation, and said, Sarah, stop. Families handle things privately. You should have come to us instead of digging like some investigator. I turned toward her slowly. I did not dig. I documented. There is a difference. Marilyn's jaw tightened. She knew what that meant. She knew documentation had consequences. I took the packet from my father and pulled out a smaller set of papers stapled at the top. This is the part you should pay attention to, I said calmly, placing them back on the table. My mother reached forward, but I blocked her hand without touching her. No, let Jade read it. Jade's fingers trembled as she lifted the pages. Her eyes darted across the words, her lips silently forming sentences she wished she had never written. These papers contained the full transcript of a recorded call between her and her HR friend. The call where Jade laughed as she said, Sarah falls apart under pressure. She is easy to replace. The call where she told her friend to make sure I did not get the promotion because she needed Sarah to stay where she was for a while. My mother reached for Jade's shoulder, but Jade shook her hand off, tears welling in her eyes. Sarah, I was upset. I said things I did not mean. You cannot hold this against me. I kept my voice even. You said I was easy to replace. You made sure your friend believed that too. Then you destroyed the only part of my life I was building for myself. You did not just ruin my job. You ruined my stability, my finances, and my future. My father slammed the table. Jade, how could you do something like this to your own sister? His voice cracked with disappointment. Jade burst into tears, but not from guilt. Her tears came from fear, the fear of losing everything she had built on a foundation of manipulation. I leaned forward, placing both hands on the table. You asked if this was serious. It is. Because while you spent months celebrating your success online, I spent months preparing the truth. My mother stepped back, sensing something coming, something she could not control. What do you mean preparing? She asked. Her voice had changed. It was no longer sharp. It was unsteady, afraid. I pulled out my phone and placed it next to the stack of papers. Your sponsors care about their image. They care about honesty. They care about conduct. And they take violations very seriously. Jade's eyes widened. Sarah, what did you do? Tell me you did not send anything. She looked like a child begging for mercy. Please tell me you did not ruin my career. I held her gaze with steady calm. I did not ruin your career. You ruined mine. I only returned what belonged to you. Every person in the room froze. My father whispered, What did you do, Sarah? I spoke clearly, every word landing. With the weight of the months I had suffered. Every sponsor Jade works with has already received the evidence. Her HR friend's employer has received it. The compliance board has received it. And your own company's board has received it too, Dad, because they deserve to know the kind of ethical environment you allow in your home. The air left the room as if someone had pulled the oxygen away. My mother's hand flew to her chest. My father's face fell into his palms. Jade collapsed into her chair, choking out, You cannot do this to me. You cannot take everything away. I stood tall, feeling the strength of every moment they had dismissed me. You took everything from me first. The words were not shouted. They were spoken with truth, and truth carried more force than anger ever could. I watched them all crumble, the golden family image shattering piece by piece. In that moment, I understood something powerful. Revenge did not need to be loud. It did not need to be violent. It only needed to be honest. And tonight, honesty was the sharpest weapon I had ever held. The room stayed silent after my words settled in the air, A silence so heavy it felt like every person there was holding their breath. For the first time in my life, no one spoke over me. No one dismissed me. No one told me to calm down or be reasonable. They finally understood that I was not the fragile daughter they had created in their minds, and that realization frightened them more than anything contained in the envelope. My father slid his glasses off and rubbed his face with both hands, a gesture he usually reserved for work disasters, not family matters. He looked at Jade, then at my mother, and something shifted in his eyes. It was the first time he was truly seeing them, not the polished versions he had always chosen to believe in. My mother, whose entire identity revolved around appearances, stumbled backward and sat down weakly as if her legs could not hold the weight of what this meant. She kept repeating the same sentence under her breath. This cannot be happening, as if saying it would somehow reverse the damage. But nothing could undo the truth, not denial, not shock, not tears. Jade leaned forward, gripping the edge of the table, shaking from fear and humiliation. She tried to speak, but the words stuck in her throat. The girl who built a life around confidence and perfect pictures now looked like a child watching her world collapse in slow motion. She whispered, "Sarah, you do not understand. Those sponsors are everything to me. That platform is everything I have." Her voice cracked in a way I had never heard. I stared at her with a calm I did not know I possessed. "You destroyed everything I had. You expected me to survive without complaining. Now you will experience the same rebuilding." She shook her head violently. "This is worse. This will follow me everywhere." My mother reached for her hand, trying to comfort her. But Jade pulled away and covered her face, sobbing like her life had ended. They were so used to hurting others without consequences that the first taste of accountability felt unbearable. My father finally stood and tried to regain control of the room, but his voice no longer held authority. "Sarah, we can fix this," he said, almost pleading. "We can undo whatever has been sent if we act quickly." I shook my head. "No. What has been sent stays sent. For once, there are consequences." He took a step toward me, but I did not move. "Please," he said softly. "We cannot have this scandal reach the board." I looked at him, the same man who had pointed to a folding chair earlier and said I did not belong at the main table. "Maybe now you know what it feels like to have your worth questioned." He opened his mouth, but no words came out. His pride had always been unshakable, but tonight it cracked wide open. My mother finally found her voice again and stood, anger burning through her fear. "How dare you do this to your own family?" she said. "We raised you. We gave you everything." I looked at her with steady eyes. "You raised Jade. You invested in her. You protected her. You praised her. You made sure she always felt valued." I raised myself. She opened her mouth again, but nothing she could say would erase the truth. For years, she had encouraged Jade's behavior, even laughed at her cruelty, convinced herself that I was strong enough to handle anything, while Jade deserved the world. Now she had to live with the version of Jade she helped create. I took a step back from the table and let the silence settle again. "I do not owe this family anything," I said. "Not loyalty, not protection, not silence." Jade looked up at me with tear-filled eyes. "So this is revenge," she whispered. "This is you getting even." I paused, letting the moment hold its weight. "No," I said. "This is me ending the cycle. This is me walking away from people who never valued me." My father reached out a hand as if to stop me. "Do not leave like this," he said. "We can talk. We can fix things." I looked at all three of them, their faces pale, tense, and terrified of the consequences waiting for them outside these walls. I picked up my coat and said, "You cannot fix what you chose to break." As I walked toward the door, the sound of Jade sobbing, my mother panicking, and my father calling my name filled the room, but none of it pulled me back. For the first time in 31 years, their voices no longer controlled me. I stepped out into the cold night, the air sharp and clean, and felt something I had never experienced with them. Freedom. Real freedom. Freedom from the constant comparison, the disrespect, the emotional bruises they pretended not to see. I walked to my car, closed the door behind me, and allowed myself to breathe. Not a shaky breath filled with pain, but a steady breath filled with clarity. They could break apart inside that house. They could rebuild or continue lying to themselves. It no longer mattered. I was done being the forgotten daughter. I was done being the quiet sister. Tonight, I claimed my own success, and it felt stronger than anything they had ever praised. As I pulled away from the driveway, I looked at the Hale family home one last time. The lights were still on, but the illusion inside had finally gone dark, and for the first time, I walked into my future without them holding me back. If this story pulled you in, make sure to subscribe and comment where you're watching from.